The Dancing Plague of 1518. When 400 people literally danced themselves to death in medieval Strasbourg. Picture this. You're walking through medieval Strasbourg when you see a woman in the town square dancing frantically. Her feet are bleeding, her dress is torn, but she can't stop moving. Soon, dozens join her, then hundreds. Within a month, 400 people are trapped in a deadly dance marathon, and 15 have literally danced themselves to death. This isn't celebration, it's the dancing plague of 1518, when an entire city lost control of their bodies and danced toward death in history's most bizarre mass hysteria event. Chapter 1. Frau Trophaea's Deadly Dance. July 14th, 1518. Strasbourg was a wealthy trading city of 20,000, but beneath its prosperity lurked medieval horrors, famine, plague, and grinding poverty. The summer had been harsh. Crop failures led to bread shortages, and religious tensions from the early Protestant Reformation had everyone on edge. That's when Frau Trophaea stepped into the narrow Rue des Écrivains and began to dance. Witnesses described her movements as both beautiful and terrifying, graceful but unnatural, her eyes wide with terror as she spun and swayed with arms raised high. Baker Klaus Zimmermann later testified, "She danced like she was possessed by demons. Beautiful, yes, but horrible too. Her feet began bleeding after the first hour, but still she danced. We begged her to stop, but she couldn't hear us, or wouldn't." By sunset, Frau Trophaea had been dancing for 6 hours straight. Her dress was soaked with sweat, her feet leaving bloody prints on cobblestones, but her body refused to obey her mind's desperate commands to stop. Chapter 2. The Contagion Spreads. Day 2. Something unprecedented happened. Other people began dancing too. First was Frau Loeffler, a widow who sold vegetables. Then Hans Sydenham, a young tanner's apprentice. By July 20th, 30 people were dancing in Strasbourg's streets, their movements synchronized but not coordinated, as if controlled by invisible puppeteers. Dr. Johannes Wencker examined the dancers and wrote in bewilderment, "Their pulses are rapid, breathing labored, yet they show no signs of usual maladies. They appear in great distress but cannot cease their movements. When physically restrained, they struggle violently to continue dancing." The victims weren't random. Mostly lower-class women aged 20-40, struggling with poverty, dead husbands, starving children. But the plague also claimed unexpected victims like wealthy cloth merchant Johann Fluch, shocking the upper classes. If a guild member could be afflicted, no one was safe. Chapter 3. The City's Catastrophic Cure. Faced with this crisis, Strasbourg's physicians consulted ancient texts and concluded the affliction was caused by hot blood that needed cooling through continued movement. Their solution? More dancing. In history's most misguided public health decision, the city council hired professional musicians and built wooden stages for the dancers. Master Wilhelm Korn, the chief musician, wrote, "We played every tune we knew, but the afflicted didn't dance to our music. They moved to some rhythm we couldn't hear, some beat from their tortured souls." The strategy backfired catastrophically. Instead of curing the dancers, the music attracted more victims. The sound drew curious onlookers, and many who came to watch found themselves inexplicably joining the dance. By August 1st, nearly 400 people, 2% of Strasbourg's population, were dancing continuously. Chapter 4. Dancing to Death. As July turned to August, the plague claimed its first lives. Matthias Grun, a 45-year-old blacksmith, danced for 11 days before his heart gave out. Witnesses said he was spinning in the cathedral square when he clutched his chest and collapsed. Even while dying, his legs kept twitching in rhythm. Frau Elisabeth Waldmann died from dehydration after 13 days, refusing all water and food. Most tragically, 13-year-old Anna Schaefer danced for 8 days before collapsing from exhaustion and never waking up. Dr. Wencker found the victims' bodies pushed beyond human limits, feet worn to bone, hearts enlarged from constant exertion, brains showing fever damage. The dancers existed in nightmarish limbo, aware of their situation but unable to stop. They described feeling like invisible strings controlled their limbs or that the ground beneath them was burning. Chapter 5. Theories of Madness. Medieval authorities desperately sought explanations. Priests blamed demonic possession and organized exorcisms. Physicians preferred corrupt vapors from the earth or imbalanced body humors. Treatments ranged from bloodletting to drilling holes in skulls to release evil vapors. None worked. Modern experts believe it was mass psychogenic illness, psychological stress manifesting as physical symptoms that spread through suggestion. Strasbourg faced perfect conditions: economic hardship, religious upheaval, social tension, and constant fear. The plague primarily affected those with least power and most stress. Another theory suggests ergot poisoning, a fungus growing on rye in wet conditions that causes convulsions, hallucinations, and compulsive movement. The summer of 1518 was unusually wet, and the poor relied heavily on rye bread. Most likely, ergot triggered initial episodes while mass hysteria spread the contagion. Chapter 6. Divine Intervention. By mid-August, with 400 people dancing and deaths mounting, authorities abandoned medical treatments and turned to religion. On August 20th, an extraordinary procession left Strasbourg. Nearly 400 dancers, still moving frantically, accompanied by families and officials on a 25-mile pilgrimage to Saint Vitus's shrine at Saverne. The logistics were nightmarish: carts for collapsed dancers, guards to prevent wandering, food stations every few miles. Local villages either fled in terror or gathered to witness what seemed like divine punishment made manifest. At the shrine, something remarkable happened. The dancing began to stop. Not all at once. First the recently afflicted, then gradually more over several days. By September 5th, only a handful continued their compulsive movements. The church credited Saint Vitus, but exhaustion, environmental change, and collective belief in the cure likely broke the psychological spell. Chapter 7. The Final Tally and Legacy. When the last dancer stopped in early September, Strasbourg counted 15 official deaths, though the actual number was likely higher. Hundreds more suffered joint damage, malnutrition, psychological trauma, and lasting social stigma. Survivors described horrifying experiences. Frau Trofea recalled, "I was aware of dancing, aware of the pain, aware of watching crowds, but could not stop. Someone else inhabited my body." Margaret Kessler, a widow with 4 children, said, "I knew my children needed me, were hungry and frightened, but I could not stop dancing to care for them. That knowledge was agony worse than physical pain." The plague shattered confidence in medical and religious authorities while demonstrating how psychological stress can manifest as real physical symptoms and spread through populations via suggestion. The dancing plague of 1518 reveals profound truths about human psychology and social contagion. It shows how extraordinary circumstances can make ordinary people transcend normal experience. A collective loss of control that was simultaneously terrifying and strangely liberating. The 400 dancers of Strasbourg didn't choose their fate, but in their frantic movements found strange freedom from medieval life's constraints. Their dance was cry for help and form of protest, breakdown and breakthrough, individual suffering and collective expression. In our modern world of viral trends and mass movements, their lessons remain relevant. Sometimes when life's pressures become unbearable, people find ways to escape, even if that escape looks like madness. The line between sanity and insanity, individual will and group compulsion, is thinner than we believe. 500 years later, we're still trying to understand what drove them to move, what compelled them to continue, and what finally allowed them to stop. Their story reminds us that behind history's strangest headlines lie very real human tragedies, and that sometimes losing control is the only way to find freedom. Next episode, The Year Without a Summer, 1816, when a volcano killed summer and created Frankenstein. In 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted with the force of 1,000 hydrogen bombs, ejecting so much ash into the atmosphere that it blocked sunlight across the entire northern hemisphere. The year 1816 became known as the Year Without a Summer. Crops failed worldwide, snow fell in July, and global temperatures dropped by 3 degrees Celsius. In Switzerland, Mary Shelley was trapped indoors during the haunted summer and wrote Frankenstein. In New England, farmers abandoned their land and migrated west. In China, the Yellow River changed course. River. This is the story of how one volcanic explosion changed world history, triggered the largest migration in American history, and gave birth to modern horror literature.